Hello and welcome back to another episode of Critical Reactions with your host Bryan. We're going to wrap up this week's theme of multiple vocalists with the group Thinking Fellers Union Local 282. We've checked out this group on live stream, I think, before, but I don't recall doing a full reaction to them. Today we're going to be looking at Cup of Dreams, which comes off of their Strangers from the Universe album, 1994. This shows up right in the middle of the album at track 9. Let's dive in. See what the Thinkin' Fellers Union, Local 282, is bringing to the table today. Okay, so something a little dreamy. Kind of, it's toy box stuff, right? Into this dark, kind of grungy vibe. The chirping right there, what is that, running the pick across the strings above the nut? I don't know what that is. I think that would be a much higher tone. Whatever, it's a very percussive use of a stringed instrument. I like it. The drums are almost digital. I'm trying to figure out what they are now. Yeah, I think the drums are still digital, right? I mean, it could just be MIDI triggering, it could be a digital kit, but it just doesn't sound acoustic. So bringing back that hazy, low-fidelity sound from the opening toy box, putting it on the vocals. Lots of sound effects, bubbling water. Steam being released, people yelping. The cymbal sounds acoustic-ish. That snare is still very compressed though. It feels very digital. You got a cello? Got some cool like woodblock stuff over here. So the previous part's very grungy, but this one feels more indie rock, gazy. That's my fault. If you heard that notification, that was on my end. As soon as the song's calming down, I think it was even in rhythm with that. Dang Discord, man. I apologize about that. I usually close Discord before recording, and I just forgot. Anyways, what's going on with this track? It's interesting, right? It's experimental, I think, in a lot of ways, but it experiments on top of a grunge gaze foundation. And the grunge gaze thing operates in isolation of each other. There are parts of this song that are grungy, there are parts that are gazy. And then the experimentation happens on top of both of those, but also in isolation. There's some sections in here that are just pure experimentation, as far as I can tell. And so I kind of want to approach it from these three perspectives. But I feel like that's not necessarily the best way to go about it, because the song is so much more than just those three parts. But I feel like breaking it down is the best way to get into it. So that's what we're going to do here. We have the experimental-ish opening. We're going to save that to discuss in a second. But the first main part of the song, I felt, was the grungy section. After we got through that sort of sound effect and sample-based intro, and we got into some traditional music writing. We brought in the drums, the guitars, the bass. This part feels super grungy. It is dreary. It doesn't have a lot of energy to it. A lot of the instruments have darker timbres to them. Their tone is darker. And the note choices and the chords are darker and drearier and more melancholic. The entire song feels like it just wants to melt onto the floor and stay there. There's no energy left to get off. And it's just a real heavy moment to the song compared to everything else. The intro, the gazier part that comes in after this. It's just a real bummer of a part. And I find that to be interesting, especially with what comes around it. But I think that they do a fantastic job of leaning into this, even with some elements that they sort of detract from that. We'll talk about that in a second. But when you're just paying attention to the notes, the core instruments here, it's heavy. You listen to the vocals, and they kind of come through with a lack of energy to them. A bit more of a darker tone as well. It's just really bringing things down, also. It's about playing low notes with dark instruments and allowing this weight to just hang on the song atmospherically. This really is the description of the song or of this section for maybe the first 10% of it, honestly, because we begin to slow burn it in some ways, adding more and more layers, but not instruments. No. Sound effects. We have grunts, little exasperated surprises, like someone sneaking up on you. You're like, just something like that. Not super loud or anything, just a little bit of surprise. We have steam being let go. We have bubbles in water. There's all sorts of stuff that I'm sure I'm forgetting many. I know there's wood blocks in here every couple of beats, just dun, 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 something like that. A nice little light embellishment to the atmosphere. It's kind of wild to listen to all these layers come on, not in a musical way, but atmosphere, texture. A lot of it's just samples of stuff. I'm not sure what it has to do with anything that's going on musically here, but the choices of sounds that they use here work in a sense. None of them are really positive, neutral at best, but I think within the context of this dreary, dripping, melting onto the floor sounds, this lethargy, the idea of bubbles rising tries to be a counter to that. It's energy. If the song is falling down, the air in the water is rising up. Um, the steam being released, I mean, that's pressure, and this is a release of pressure. Um, it's almost the polar opposite, but there's also a sort of horror element to some of this stuff. The surprised sound, even the bubbles and the steam, kind of fitting into like an old '70s style mad scientist lab. They both work in opposition, but also to lean into this vibe as well. Again, I'm not really sure what to take away from it. I'm trying my best to make some connections here that I might be able to tie together later. But I do find it quite evocative, too. They seem random at first, all of these different sounds, but they end up locking into place to create a specific vibe. One that, well, kind of feels just as antagonistic as the instrumental parts do. I kind of like this, and pairing it with the very compressed digitized drums, what originally felt like something out of place, given the electric uh, bass and the electric guitar, and the drum sounds. We have a bass kick sound, a cymbal sound, a snare sound. This is a drum kit, a very typical instrument in a rock band, and to present it with these very digital drum sounds. Like I said, I don't know if it was MIDI sampling or triggering. I don't know if it was just a digital drum kit and this was the library they were using with it. Maybe there's no drummer. Maybe this is just a drum pad, right? Wait, when did this come out? This is early, right? 94. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I still think it could be any of those. A keyboard with some drum sounds in it. The snare, particularly, sounds like that to me. It's not a very good snare sound. It's like a definitely MIDI snare kind of thing going on. And it felt really out of place. That's what I'm getting with all this. It was really out of place, given everything else. But as these other layers came in, it kind of began to click. It worked. I think more interesting too is that they kind of showcase the guitar. The guitar works off on the right, bass is center. All the samples are left though. It's almost in like songs where you have two guitars, put one on either side, and they're doing counterpoint, they're playing different things or something like that. And you kind of hear them separated out. That's what's going on here with the samples versus the guitar. That's wild too. Part of the atmosphere, I figured it would just be center channel or something like that, and it wasn't. Just after this, though, we get out of the grungy part and we move into something a bit gazier. The guitar is less overbearing as far as weight, and now it's overbearing due to compression. There's a lot of white noise on it. This is also paired with a brand new harmonic palette. This one is a bit more upbeat, maybe not cheerful, but definitely a bit poppier. If I remember right, though, this was also the part where the vocals came in and they were super compressed, which was a callback to the ultra compression of the toy box at the beginning. It sounded like the vocals were coming through a very low fidelity, old time, like, I don't know, radio. This is another thing that kind of pairs with the production side of things. Yeah, harmonically we've changed too, but I mean, as far as the production on this whole thing, it feels very different from that grungier part. Of course, the production kicks in too, but some instruments are a bit clearer. I believe the drums weren't as digital anymore. At least the oh, you know what it was? It was the cymbal. Was it the hi hat that felt more acoustic this time around? But we paired it with this lo-fi vocal production, and it's just like nothing ever really feels like it moves in a linear fashion. Some things get better and others get, well, not some things become clearer, more higher fidelity, and others become lower fidelity. It's this constant mishmash of sound, almost like a production collage. Different instruments get different styles of production, and I find that to be very interesting. It allows the song to feel like it's continuously growing in ways that's not always clear where that direction is. It's just change, growth in a sense, but no clear direction. We're not growing up or shrinking, we're just changing. Metamorphosis for the sake of metamorphosis. That entire concept I find to be perplexing. It's absolutely wild that the song can continue to alter it's the colors of its palette that it paints with. The core identity of its sound is constantly in flux. That's pretty much the two parts of the song then. The grungier side that's a bit darker and drearier, and the gazier side that's more compressed but slightly brighter, more optimistic, while still having a bit of negativity to it. The final part of this song then is the experimental part. And we've kind of already talked about that a little bit. It's, I mean, it crops up everywhere. It's all of those sound effects in the grungy part. It's the production stuff and the highly compressed vocals in that first gazy part. It's the entire beginning of the song. I honestly had no idea what I was in store for with the opening. I mean, that went for like 30 seconds of this little toy box low fidelity sounds. How was I supposed to expect grunge to come out of that? Harmonically, totally different. Production wise, totally different. It's just two wildly different approaches to music mashed up together, and I'm just expected to accept it, I guess. this constant evolution of sound and palette and samples, production styles, it continues to grow. We jump back and forth between more layered ideas, the grungy section, the gazy section. We have a couple of extended instrumental parts. The vocals honestly don't show up too often on this track, but it all comes to a head at the end of this song. And I'm not entirely sure how to feel about this. It's a very lengthy ending that is just kind of a letdown, I thought. Of all the interesting ideas, I was kind of hoping it led to something of worth. Whether it was a complete subversion of the ideas, or bringing everything together, or creating something a bit more esoteric out of it, or maybe condensing it down into something palatable, just some sort of commentary on the various sounds and noises. And instead, we just get another guitar riff, another melody, a rhythm, and then we fade that out. And honestly, it kind of feels lackluster to me. I'm intrigued by it, sure. This song undercuts my expectations at every corner. It always does the opposite of what I expect it to do. But I feel like for endings, that's not always a good thing. Sometimes endings can surprise me in positive ways, sure, but I guess I'm just left wondering why at the end of this. What is the purpose of this mismatched conglomeration of sounds? What does it all mean? Why is it all strung together this way? What's the purpose of all the sampling? I was hoping musically to get an answer to that, and they didn't give me one. At least not one that I could understand. And I'll take some of that. There's a good chance that I just lack the understanding, whether it's musical knowledge or context or just who they are as artists, that would unlock a little bit of what this ending was supposed to represent. But whether they purposefully didn't include any answers, or I'm just not privy to the knowledge to find the answer myself, I'm just left a little numb at the end of this track. Underwhelmed, and ultimately wanting to know why. I want answers. Usually I'm the one up here telling you why bands do things, and they've stumped me in a way that it's not about seeing the parts and not understanding them, but I don't even understand the parts at times with this. It's experimental, esoteric, avant-garde. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that's prone to stump me. It's usually less clear in their directive anyways, but I do find it interesting that they pair it with more traditional sounds, and I think that makes me want to dig even deeper to figure it out. Some experimental stuff you're like, wow, that was weird, and I'll move on with my life. And this one I'm like, well, that was kind of strange, but kind of not. And I need to know why. Like, I'm invested now. So let me dive into some lyrics, see what's going on there, and I don't know, maybe we'll find some answers. All right, y'all. Bear with me on this one. This is either nonsense or total metaphor, and I usually have a tough time breaking down these lyrics, stuff like this. Rub a dub dub, showers fall from heaven. Scrub a dub dub, rinse your worries away. Hop to it before the thunder drowns our mouths. We'll sing a song of curves and bends and slippery skin. Let's make our heads explode and fill the storm with flying ash. The rain will swirl us away and wash out our dirty minds. This is the first half of the song. There's only another scrub a dub dub section and 4 lines after that for a second verse. What does this mean? I mean, there's the concept of cleaning, right? That shows up a couple of times. Showers falling from heaven, rinsing your worries away. The rain will wash out our dirty minds. I think this idea is, is this a religious track? Because it mentions the showers from heaven, and then it mentions washing out dirty minds. That's my interpretation of this then. So, hop to it before the thunder drowns our mouths would be something along the lines of, get clean now before things are too late. Possibly referring to death, and you don't have a time to repent and clean yourself, metaphorically. This song, singing a song of curves and bends and slippery skin. I don't know. My first thing I think of is rivers. Or on the topic of water, rivers have curves and bends. Singing a song of rivers. I don't know about that one. Making our heads explode and fill the storm with flying ash. I'm totally lost on that one. I'm trying to think of the concept of like unleashing ourselves onto the world. I don't know. The second set, Scrub-a-dub-dub, clean and free and thirsty. Scrub-a-dub-dub, squeaky, squirrely delight. Let's soak our toes in champagne. Let's dance on a lonely street. Let's kick up a cloud of dust and shake our heads to a fancy beat. Let's squish the life out of everything and clear through a swanky ghost. And cheer through a swanky ghost. Let's bathe in a cup of dreams and share in a saucy toast. My best interpretation of this is let's live our best lives. Now, maybe this is a best life in heaven, or maybe this whole religious angle is completely off. I don't know. It does talk about squishing the life out and cheering through a swanky ghost, which makes you think of afterlife, and heaven tends to be depicted as a pretty chill place to be. Having, cups of dreams and dancing to fancy beats, soaking toes in champagne, not necessarily the stereotypical depictions of heaven, but definitely one of excess and comfort. So I don't know, man. Trying to pair all this about becoming clean, cleanliness, and living good with the dreary, grungy sound and the wild sample layering and the hopefully optimistic but still kind of dreary, noisier side of this song. I have no idea how any of this works together. And the ending, I've got nothing for that either. I don't know how to work that final musical bit into the lyrics here. So I'm going to wrap this one up. I feel stupefied by this. It's a total conundrum for me. But these are my thoughts on Thinkin' Fellers Union, Local 282, Cup of Dreams. What did you think? What's your interpretation of this? Do you have anything to add on to what I said, or maybe correct me on? Do you have your own interpretation of things? Let me know. Put all that stuff down in the comment section. I'm eager to see what kind of direction any of you all go in regarding this track and what it's trying to do. Above that, the comment section, that is, there is a description box, and in there you'll find a link to Linktree, which takes you here. You can find links to my music, ways to support the channel, a link to the Discord server, and so much more. Above that, if you could, like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I greatly appreciate all three of those. Alright, that wraps it up for today. I'll be back tomorrow, though, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 10 p.m. UTC as usual. Until next time, remember to be critical, not cynical, of the music you listen to, and have a fantastic morning, afternoon, or evening, whenever you choose to watch my videos.